Welcome to sikbaggers YouTube channel. I'm Steve, and holy hell do we have a lot to unpack. Got the 2014 Street Glide back here. This was our original kind of sikbagger build. Then we switched over to the Road Glide and we built it. And honestly, the Street Glide just doesn't get as much love as it used to. But today, DNA wheels, once again, maybe you've seen it, maybe you didn't, but on the Softail, the Cholo build, we did the Mammoth fat spoke wheels front and rear. You can see back here, we've got a stock rear wheel, and I get made fun of quite a bit. Hey, we can see your stock rear wheel. You damn right, homie, because I was broke. But at the time, I could afford stretch bags, so I put those on there, and it hid most of the wheel. Today, we got new wheels, rear and the front, both matching rotors, all from DNA. Look at those wheels. When I did the Mammoth fat spokes wheels and I was shopping around for those, I accidentally ran across these, and these things look amazing. Saw them on the website, fell in love with them, and we got them. So let's talk about DNA real quick. After going over the website, you know, I always just assumed DNA is like a wheel company. That's how I've always known them. But you go into the website and they have a lot of stuff on there that aren't wheels. Front end kits, they've got foot controls, they've got headlights, saddleback. There's all kinds of stuff on that website. So they aren't just a wheel company. So if you jump over and check out their website, if you're looking at wheels, make sure to look at the other stuff. So basically what we're gonna do today is we're gonna get these on the Street Glide back there. It's gonna take us pretty much all day because I have to take these to Harley Davidson to get tires put on. I ordered the wheels, bearings, and the polished rotors to go with it, but I didn't get the tires from them. But they do offer tires as well. And right now, I'm gonna pull this camera over here and we're gonna talk about these wheels. Now looking at this wheel like this, looks like a pretty standard, cool looking wheel, but what I really like about this wheel is when you go this way. Look at that. The vanes coming from the center up go actually all the way across the wheel. So instead of this being turned sideways like this and going into the wheel like most wheels, like the wheel I have on my Street Glide now, they're turned the other way. So it almost gives you this nice, cool 3D effect. And don't mind all the fingerprints because I'm an idiot and I haven't been able to keep my hands off these wheels since I got them in. And here's the rear wheel. And by the way, we are jumping up to an 18 from a 16 in the rear. And I'll explain all that when we get the tire put on there. Look at the width on that thing. Ooh, mercy. Those things are gonna look sick when we get them on that. Look at that old busted Puma Harley Davidson rear wheel. So to prepare the wheels for mounting and balancing, like I said, we're gonna take these into Harley Davidson and have them mount and balance some tires on here. But in order to do that, you absolutely have to have the rotors installed on the wheels. And unless you have a new pulley, you're gonna wanna go ahead and pull the pulley and the CUSH drive off of this, which we'll do before we take it into Harley. So I'll show you how to get all that off and prep it and set it up for reinstallation so everything goes smoothly. But for right now, we're gonna work on the front wheel. We're gonna take our matching rotor. So if we line up the holes there, the vanes are pretty well lined up. I just wanna double check that no matter which way I put this, the vanes on the rotor are gonna match the vanes in the wheel. You are gonna need some medium Loctite. Doesn't matter what brand you use, as long as you have some blue thread locker. We got some Harley Davidson polished bolts to go on here. Now this calls for bolts only, no bolts and washers. So bolts only, little blue Loctite, and then 24 foot-pounds on these. And by the way too, there are a difference between the front and the rear, just in case you were wondering. On the front, you're gonna need part number 46646-05 if you wanna get the chrome rotor bolts from Harley. On the rear, you're gonna need 46647-05. There are a difference. So we've got two sets of front because you have two rotors, unless you have one, but most of them, they come OEM with two. And on the rear, you'll have the single. We're gonna take our blue Loctite, get it on the threads, and we're gonna hand start these. Do not start these with any power tools. Make sure you start them by hand. So these are gonna be a T40. We're gonna run these in by hand. We're gonna do a little star pattern on them. Just make sure that you go back and forth so you get these kind of even. And by the way, all of these tools will be linked in Amazon that I'm using today. This is a really nice Tecton ratchet. Of course, it's swivel, so it makes this stuff like this real easy. Now, I'm absolutely still in love with my Milwaukee wrench, my M12 ratchet, but on wheels, I like to do everything by hand. But this tool set also, this set, I got it on Amazon, really nice. Ended up taking it to Sturgis to do that bike build out there. Worked out really good. Most of your bike, 80 to 90% of your bike is all gonna be Torx and Allen. So it's a really nice heavy duty set that's a hell of a lot cheaper than Snap-on. So we're gonna get that on. We got all those hand tightened. We're gonna get our torque wrench out. We'll set this to 24 foot-pounds. Star pattern once again. One ugga-dugga. When you hear that torque wrench click, stop. It's torque to spec. Don't keep doing it. 2, 3, 4 ugga-duggas. Now we got that side all fingerprinted up. We're gonna flip it over to the other side. Same thing again. Little blue Loctite and start them. Torque wrench, 24 foot-pounds again. Star pattern. Now the front wheel's ready to go. We're gonna move over to the rear wheel. So now we got the rear one up here, got the rotor on, and we're gonna do the same thing. Little blue Loctite on each one of these. Had to get the table cleaned up a little bit because I don't want to start scratching stuff. I had too many tools up here. Got these new chrome wheels and I like to keep them that way. So we're going to start these by hand just like on the other ones. Nothing different. Once we get this on, we're going to pull the rear wheel on the bike and get the CUSH hub off there. So before we pull this rear wheel, we're gonna do a couple of things that's gonna make our lives a lot easier when we come back to put the new wheel back on. If you look right here, you're gonna see these cam adjusters. This side is connected, this is a weld nut. So this nut is welded to this cam, which is also part of your rear axle. That goes all the way through to the other side, and on the other side you just have a regular nut. It's called a cone nut, but it's just a nut. So move the camera down so you can see the cam a little bit better. Now if you have dual exhaust on your bike, you may have to remove the slip-ons. Very easy to do. We have a side pipe on ours, so we don't have to worry about it. But the cross-under pipe will come under here, loosen that at the header right there. It's just a regular normal muffler bracket. You're gonna loosen that, come back here. You're gonna have this hanger back here. It's gonna have 2 bolts in it, or if you got the Vance & Hines goofy one that's got the side thing on it, it's just gonna slip in. But you'll see 2 bolts right up here at the top. Remove those and get your slip-on off and out of the way. This cam right here is what adjusts your belt, and that's all part of the rear axle. So if I have the cone nut loose on the other side and I start turning this cam is going to push on this lip right here, and it's going to pull, depending on which way I'm pushing on the nut. If I do it clockwise, it's going to pull the wheel back, because you can see the cam gets larger as it goes around. If I do it counterclockwise, that's going to let the wheel roll forward, loosening the belt. So for right now, the easiest way to do this and to make our life a hell of a lot easier when we get back is just mark the location of the cam in comparison to the rear swing arm. So we're going to do that on both sides. And I always make 2 marks because it's super easy. I'm going to use a silver Sharpie on the black part, and we'll see if we can see it on the silver, but if not, we'll use a black Sharpie on there. But when you put this back on, all you have to do is line those 2 marks back up, and your belt is going to be at the exact same tension that it was when you took the wheel off. So you can make your marks anywhere you want, but I'm gonna use that tab that's on there, and I'm gonna use the side of it. I'm gonna make 2 marks on there. Now I want to make exact corresponding marks on the cam itself. Now just for video purposes, I went ahead and marked this side black so you can see it a little bit better at home. But I've got my silver marks lined straight up with my black marks. So when I put this axle back in the new wheel, I can turn this and line those marks up, line the marks up on the other side, and go ahead and tighten it down. And we know our belt should be pretty much dead on where it was when we took it off. So before we start taking the axle out and all that stuff, we're gonna remove the brake caliper, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. You got a bolt here, you got a bolt here. My bike is gonna be an 8mm Allen. Back here on the back side, you're going to have a little hose clamp that just kind of holds that in place. You can take your finger, open that, you're going to pull that up. See how that came off? Now we're going to raise the caliper up. We're just going to lift up on the caliper, and you kind of got to wiggle it around the wheel just a little bit, and you can get this up and off. We're going to take one of these non-Harley Davidson brake caliper holders. We're going to put that in here to protect this thing from banging off any chrome paint, whatever. Very easy to use, and they have a drawstring on them, so turn this thing, get it out of my way. Now I move the camera down so you can see the other side. This is the cone nut. Remember on the other side? So on the other side, that nut is welded to the adjuster, and on this side, it's not. But you do have a little clip here that you have to get off, a little C-clip. We're going to take a flathead screwdriver and just remove that little clip. Now, if you're having trouble getting your socket or your wrench on this nut because of your rear shock, as long as you have the bike on the jack, you can take these bolts out of your rear shock and just pull it back and move it out of the way. We can get a big crescent wrench on here. Basically, you just want to hold one side, 36 millimeter socket on the other side, and get it broke loose. Now to have this right side loose, I can simply take this nut, this cone nut, off by hand. I'm going to go ahead and let my jack down until my tire touches the ground or the table. We just want to let a little bit of that weight off. Now, this camber right here has to be rolled forward to loosen this belt, to get the belt off. So we can take our wrench and we can roll that forward. You've seen that whole wheel just move forward. Now look how sloppy that is. So now we can get this belt off. Now back on this side, you'll see this cam, right? Super loose. We're gonna go ahead and pull that out. Pull it off. We're gonna turn it just a little bit to get that off. Just like that. And I'm gonna show you that cam. So there's a little flat spot right there on that cam, and there's a flat spot on the side of your axle, so you know that that's how that goes back on there. Now on this side of the bike, we've messed with the jack just enough to get this super loose so I can move this whole thing, so I know I have the bike perfect to go ahead and pull this axle out. So we're just gonna slide this out. So one thing I want to mention before you start pulling that rear wheel, when you're using a jack, you want to think about the counterbalance of the bike, because you're getting ready to take a load of weight off of the back of the bike, right? That wheel and tire weighs quite a bit. So you want to take that into consideration when you're placing your jack under the bike. So that way when you pull that axle out and you drop the full weight of that wheel and tire off your bike doesn't just go thunk down onto the front wheel and you've got your motorcycle jack in a really bad bind and you're stuck by yourself and your phone's way over there on the desk. Yeah, been there. So just remember that when you're taking that weight off the rear of the bike, think about where you're putting the jack, okay? Make sure you set the jack a little bit more forward to take more of that weight when you pull that off. If you got the jack slid all the way back and you take that off, well, now the front of the bike's just gonna thunk and that jack's gonna bend. So now I have seen some model bikes where this saddlebag rail gets in the way when you're pulling the axle out. If that is the case, you just have two bolts back here to release this. You can loosen this one and just let that fall down out of the way. So I'll move the camera around to this back side. We got our brake caliper bracket right here. Our axle went through that. See, we can move that back and forward now. So right in here is a spacer. So we want to get that spacer out of there. We're going to remove this caliper bracket. We're going to slide it forward. What we're going to try to do is shift the wheel over just a little bit. We got that bracket pushed over and up, and we're going to pull it out. That's our bracket. That's our spacer. I want you to pay very close attention to the spacer. You see these two lines? They always go to the outside. There's our caliper bracket. You can see the slot on the front right here. That's where it slid onto this right here. Now on this side of the bike, we also have another little spacer between the swing arm and the pulley, just like that. Now we have everything off and the wheel is ready to come off. We should be able to slide this slightly forward and we can pull this belt from the top, just like that. Now we've removed the belt. We're gonna roll this wheel until our table piece falls out. Very simple, but if you don't have that piece on your table, you're gonna have to get that jack a lot higher. So on the front wheel, we don't need to pull it to go get a tire put on because we got new rotors. So rotors have to be on the wheel when you get them tires mounted and balanced. Took the wheel off because we may need this CUSH assembly. I'm not sure, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it with me. And plus we're just one step ahead when we get back. But this is your rear pulley, and inside here, if you wiggle this off and set this off to the side, you'll see this back side here has these big like veins or teeth. Another thing you want to do right now is go ahead and check that rear bearing. Make sure you spin it with your hand, make sure it spins free. You don't hear any crunching, anything out of the ordinary. Now inside here, you'll see the CUSH drive dampener. This is just a big chunk of goofy looking rubber. It actually fits down inside this hub, and then the other side of the pulley sets these little veins set in these grooves. And what this rubber does is it acts like a dampener. It almost acts like the compensator in the front of your bike. It's like a compensator for the rear. So when you hammer on your bike, all of that torque isn't just going directly to the hub. This big chunk of rubber is going to absorb some of that, and it's going to make your ride a lot smoother. So you want to inspect this CUSH. So you want to inspect this, make sure it's good. We're going to go ahead and take it out. When you're putting it back in, you just want to use a little soap water to get this right back in. But for now, we're just going to pull this out. Now you can see it, just a big chunk of rubber, and these are your cushions. So you got them veins sitting in there. So when you torque on it, this right here just kind of squeezes in. They're super tough. You can't do it with your hand. But imagine the amount of torque you're putting on that when you hammer on your bike, right? So that makes everything a lot smoother. So now we're just going to take all this to Harley-Davidson, have them mount and balance the tires, and we'll be right back. So it's very important to get this back the way that it goes, or your pulley just will simply not go on there. If you look at the back side, remember the slots. The slots on the back side go over the slots in this. This will fit. You can drop it straight down in there like that. That's wrong. You want to turn it, put the slots in like that, and then on the back side of your pulley, your veins that come off here are going to go in between here. So we're going to set that on there like that. And if you find it really, really hard to get either one of those in, take a little soap water, spray a little soap water inside that hub, slide that rubber piece in, spray it again, slide your pulley on, and there you go. Now we're going to take our rear axle and we're going to clean it up. Go ahead and inspect it, make sure everything looks good on the axle. Then we're going to bring it over here and we're going to put some anti-seize on it. All the way across. Now we just take our hand like that, and we get that anti-seize all over the rear axle. Just make sure that it's completely covered. You want to keep it off the threads, of course, but just on the axle part. So it just takes a minute to go ahead and clean everything up, inspect everything. Also, really good time to inspect your pulley. You want to look for any chips, cracks. Once you have visually inspected it, now you can put it on the bike. Get it up in there, we got to push forward and slide our belt back on our pulley. Now we're pretty straight, so when we start lowering the bike back down to put the axle in, we're not going to be hitting anything. We're going to slowly start lowering her back down just a little bit. One thing I forgot to mention too, OEM wheel, 16 inches. The one we got from DNA, 18 inches. So you would think you're going to gain 2 inches, right? But you're not. You're only gaining maybe about an inch, because the sidewall on a 16 is about 2 3/8 if I remember right, and the sidewall on an 18 is about 1.5 inches. So it just doesn't have that taller sidewall on. It's a little bit lower profile tire, so you're really only gaining about 1 inch. Fairly lined up right there. You're gonna have to push this over, get your spacer in there, kind of try to hold it in place like that, and just pulling the wheel onto it so I can get my axle through there. Then we're gonna start sliding that through. So we came out the other side of the wheel here. We've got our other spacer and we have our brake caliper bracket, right? So we need to put our brake caliper bracket back on. If you push the axle all the way through, go ahead and push it back flush with the rotor right now. We're gonna get the brake caliper bracket. This groove goes on this groove right here. This lines up with the axle hole. We're gonna slide that in. We're gonna give it a little turn, a little twist, put it onto place, and we're gonna actually slide it back till we see it lining up with the hole back here. Now, when we slide our spacer in, 2 rings out, and go back to the other side and push our axle through. So we've taken the spacer, we've got it pushed in. We're gonna take our brake caliper bracket, we're gonna slide that into place. We're gonna make sure that we can get this in. Sometimes you gotta lift up on the bottom of the wheel a little bit to make sure it's straight. It's gonna be a tight fit. We get that into place where we know our axle can come through there. We're gonna go ahead and put the axle through the spacer, so that'll just kind of stay there. Now once you have everything lined up and you got the axle through most of the way, come over here to this side, go ahead and knock the axle the rest of the way through. Now we're gonna put our cam back on. Remember, our lines on the cam have to line up with the lines on the boss. So we're gonna take this cam, we're gonna put it on, we're gonna line that flat spot up with the flat spot on the axle. We're gonna slide it on. We can adjust the wheel still because we've got the weight off of it. We're gonna take a small amount of anti-seize and we're gonna put it on the inner edge of that cone nut, the part that goes up against that, right? So just a small amount. We're gonna go ahead and start that nut. So from here, what we're gonna do is go ahead and get our brake caliper back on it. Now our old rotor probably had a little bit of wear on it. So what we're gonna do is take a flathead screwdriver, we're gonna get in here and we're gonna push these pistons apart just to make sure that we have plenty of room to slide this over the new rotor. We're gonna set this up into place, slide it on over our new rotor. Lines right up. We're gonna take our bolts and go ahead and start those. Once we get them hand started, we can run these down and we'll check the torque spec here in just a little bit. Now we're gonna set this nut right here at 15 to 20 foot-pounds before we start adjusting the belt. So we set our torque wrench at about 15 pounds. Give it a little spin. Hear it click right there. 15 pounds is not very much. I'm gonna go to this side and I'm gonna start turning this. And you're gonna notice that when I turn this side, it's going to turn that other side. Our goal is to get those lines lined up. So our first torque is 15 to 20 foot-pounds, and that was to just go ahead and do the belt adjustment. After we got the belt adjustment, we're gonna go 95 to 102 foot-pounds. Now, the biggest thing to remember on this one is we can't let this side turn while we're tightening the other side, right? So we have to hold that with our big wrench, get over there and tighten that down. All right, we're gonna give it another go. 105 foot-pounds is a lot. Right there. Pull that off, one ugga-dugga. Double check both sides, looking good. Now once we have everything tightened down, we're gonna take our retaining clip that we took off at the very first, and we're just gonna pop that back on. Now the rear wheel is done. All right, now moving on to the front wheel. I have a flush axle, what they call a flush axle. So this side over here is a nut that's already been pressed into the fork, and then you got a cap on this side to get to the bolt. Holding on your brake caliper right here is going to be a 10mm 12-point socket. You are going to need a 12-point socket. So get this up in the camera and let it focus. You see all those teeth on that? That is a 12-point socket. If you stick a regular socket on this, you're going to end up stripping that bolt, having a really bad day. Once again, while you have this caliper off, do not grab the brakes for any reason. We're going to do that on both sides. 2014 up, you're going to have a pinch bolt right here. You're going to loosen this and take this pinch bolt out. This pinches the bottom of the fork together. 2013 down, you just have the bottom of this fork is a separate piece and it goes on here with two bolts. It's going to be a 6mm Allen. I'm going to put that on there, loosen that up. Get the pinch bolt out. Now we should be able to loosen this axle. Now on this front wheel, you do have spacers. You have a spacer here and you have a spacer over here. If you're going from an OEM wheel, it's gonna look a lot like that spacer that was on the left side of the rear that has the markings on it. These chrome spacers we bought when we bought this wheel, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and they're from Harley. So if you wanna get spacers like that, when you get your wheels, go ahead and order those. They look a lot better than the aluminum spacers that go in there. Just gonna let that tire touch until I see this get loose. And once we get it loose and we can get our hand on it, we can pull this. And there's our front axle. We're gonna pull that out. You can generally let that roll forward and pop that spacer right out of there. Now with these, you know, there's really only one way these go. And those are the spacers, as I said, we got from Harley. So wide side in, little side out, but the OEM ones are just the aluminum with the 2 little lines on it. For ABS, this side over here will be your wheel speed sensor again, so a lot of times that's just a cover, it's not an actual spacer. So remember, before releasing that front wheel, same as the rear, make sure to readjust your jack for when you pull that front wheel off, all that weight, you don't want your bike flipping backwards on you, so make sure you readjust your jack to a little bit more center on the bike and roll the wheel out. We've got our new wheel. I'm gonna slide this up in there. On the side of the tire, there's an arrow pointing this way. This is the direction of the tire. So you're gonna look for that arrow. Make sure that you have that in the right position. I'm gonna get that roughly where it needs to go just by eyeballing it. It's again some new anti-seize on the axle. So we're gonna spread this on there. Take our finger, slide that wheel back, start the axle. I don't push it all the way through just yet. I'm gonna make sure that that wheel's kicked over enough for me to roll this out and slide this other spacer in. I'm just gonna hold that one by hand so it doesn't come out. Come over here and push this axle through. I'm gonna take a regular ratchet on this side so I can feel it. If I use the battery operated, I'm not gonna be able to feel if that's catching or not, or cross-threading. And I don't wanna drive that through and cross-thread that axle. So just doing it by hand, you should be able to see it sucking the flushless axle down in there, so I know it grabbed the other side. Front axle is going to be 70 to 75 foot-pounds. So we've got this set to 72. There it is right there. Put our pinch bolt back in. This is going to be 18 to 22 foot-pounds. Front axle pinch bolt's 18 to 22 foot-pounds. So set that to 20. Right there. It's not a lot on that pinch bolt. Now from here, we're gonna put our calipers back on. Now because these are new rotors and the old rotors had a little bit of wear on them, remember, flathead screwdriver, go in here, pry those apart just a little bit. Always start these by hand, spread it apart, and over the rotor. 28 to 38 foot-pounds on these. Remember, 12-point socket. So that's it, pretty easy to install, a little bit time consuming, but check those wheels out. DNA Rise, go onto the website, or you can just go onto Google and put in DNA Rise wheels. These are gonna pop up. Once again, 21 in the front, 18 in the rear. Now this comes with a 19 in the front OEM and a 16 in the rear OEM. So now from here, we've got some adjustments we need to make too. So if you're running a center stand like we are, and you change from a 16 to an 18, that's definitely gonna change your center stand stance, your height. And we have to make an adjustment for that. We gained an inch. Remember I showed you in the video, we went from a 16 to an 18, but the tire was lower profile, so we really only gained about an inch. Of course, we run the SOB center stand on this one, and it does have adjustable feet at the bottom, so maybe we can make up that difference with just a different foot. And remember, we did the Cholo build with the DNA Mammoth fat spokes, and I'll put a link to that video right here. It'll be popping up if you want to check out the DNA Mammoth fat spokes on the Cholo build. Those things turned out sick. When the sun hits those things and they're spinning, go over to the website though, because they have a lot of options. If you have any issues at all or any questions about what fits your bike or what doesn't fit your bike or what you need to do, give give them a call. If you have any questions on this install, you know the deal, comment section down below. I try to check YouTube every day and I'll help you the best that I can there. Tell your friends about us. We got to get more people onto the channel. That's what keeps us coming out here and making these videos. I hope to see you in the next video, but until then, as always, be safe, keep your knees in the breeze. Thanks for checking out the video. Don't forget to hit that like and that subscribe popping up over here. And don't forget to check out the rest of the channel because we have a ton of bagger related and soft tail videos on our channel. And to get you started, maybe you can check out this one or this one. I'm not really gonna say anything else. You can just click one of those and take you over to another video.